Welcome to ACCQ Continuing Professional Education. This time we're going to talk about one of the major accounts in the Statement of Financial Position. And nandun siya sa non-current asset. It's called PPE or Property, Plant, and Equipment. So we're going to talk about audit of property, plant, and equipment. So the salient features within this as well as the applications right after this. So before we go into the problem, the application, kailangan muna natin maintindihan ano ba yung audit of property, plant, and equipment. So of course, you have to have a knowledge of financial accounting or intermediate accounting. So ito yung nandun sa baba ng current assets. Now, particularly, it is classified under non-current assets, itong property, plant, and equipment. So when you talk about property, plant, and equipment, you're talking about not just a particular asset, but actually marami sila. No, pwede siya, it's either could be a property, a building, a self-constructed building, a plant, isang planta, or an equipment. No? Okay, so let's talk about the objectives of this particular topic. Objectives are to determine first all property, plant, and equipment on the statement of financial position, including assets that are leased under finance lease. So kasi dun sa property, plant, and equipment, hindi naman lahat yung bang ownership nung company. No? It could be either nandun sila sa isang contract of lease, no, whether it's finance lease or operating lease. So if it's under finance lease, for example, if it's owned by the entity and held by the entity or by others for the entity. And the next is, kailangan natin, aside from determining yung whether that is finance lease, no? All property, plant, and equipment owned or leased under finance leases by the entity at year-end are included in the financial position. Ayan. So, especially yung mga under finance lease, no? Okay, so kasi part yan ng asset section doon sa property, plant, and equipment. Property, plant, and equipment are reported at the appropriate amounts. So, in accounting, we're very particular about yung valuation. So, kung magkano talaga yung of course, taking it into account yung depreciation ng particular na property na yun or an equipment. Of course, the cost of property, plant, and equipment is allocated at the appropriate periods in a systematic and rational manner. So when you talk about this, you're talking about yung bang cut-off period. Okay, na yung allocation, especially yung allocation, for example, ng depreciation, no? Okay, if it's really, let's say, as of the year end, halimbawa, yun yung ginagawa nila ng preparation of financial statement. So those that appear in that particular date, kailangan na capture lahat ng mga kailangan i-account, no? Like depreciation and kung meron man impairment, no? So and yung mga additions na planta or equipment, so naandun yun sa proper time period, no? So kumbaga kumpleto sila. So one of the assertions there is yung completeness as well as yung yung sa, of course, yung sa validity, whether they own it also, no? Okay, yung propriety nun. And impaired asset, plant, and equipment is allocated at the appropriate account periods in a systematic and rational manner. So when we say about systematic and rational manner, kumbaga, if it's on that particular period, no, so dapat makover yun yung let's say na-impair siya dun sa particular period na yon. So i-allocate yung kung ano man yung impairment na yon. Okay, and then the next one is impaired property, plant, and equipment are recorded at estimated recoverable value. Of course, to be more conservative, so kailangan of course, this is also the one of the assertion of management, yung valuation na kung magkano talaga yung value ng property and equipment, nag-a-appear siya dun sa financial statement, no? Hindi siya overstated. Property, plant, and equipment held for disposal are carried at the lower of their carrying amount or fair value, less cost. Yan. So ito, no? So mga ano rin to, kumbaga yung bang parang recoverable value. No? So kasi alam mo, napakahalaga ng ano yun, yung mga amounts na nandun sa financial statement, it should reflect kung ano yung talagang value nila. Property, plant, and equipment and related accounts are properly described, classified, and disclosed in the financial statements, including the notes in conformity with PFRS. So this is, ito naman yung ano, yung assertion that all is fully disclosed. Kung meron mang mga, let's say, mga liens, yung ano na yon, yung property, plant, and equipment, o merong mga iba pang mga contracts doon na which are material, no? So dapat i-disclose yun. So, and all this pertaining doon sa property, plant, and equipment. So in conformity with PFRS. Audit procedures, examination of the opening balance. Opening balance nung, of course, pag nakita natin dun sa statement of financial position, yung opening balance nung property, plant, and equipment. So for recurring engagement, yan, first is traced opening balance to last year's working papers. So when you talk about tracing, there are yung direction mo is forward. So iti-trace mo siya, trace opening balance to last year's, no? To last year's working papers. So, yun. So, tinitrace mo. Examination of opening balance for recurring engagement. Trace opening balances to last year's working papers. So yung working papers no last year, of course, naandun yung mga analysis about dun sa property, plant, and equipment, no? So pwedeng i-trace dun kung ano yung pinanggalingan nitong mga balance nito dito sa opening balance, because yun yung pinaka, at least yung credible na clue doon sa balances, no opening balances ng property, plant, and equipment dun sa last year's working papers nung auditor. No? And for an initial audit where the previous years were audited, vouch significant transaction to a certain authorization. Okay, so when you talk about vouching, kumbaga yung bang source document, you go into that source document, so tignan mo yung authorization, no? Okay, so is this authorized by the board of directors, no? Halimbawa, kung merong sale of the said property, tapos propriety of accounting, is this, kumbaga, yung bang para dun sa company na, kumbaga, na i-account mabuti yon, no? Okay, so at their, kumbaga, yung correct values. And of course, Yan. Accounting for principles. Tulog muna tayo, tignan natin. Isa-isa yan. Accounting principles applied. Hindi ko na hindi ko na anticipate 'yun, no. Okay. So itong accounting principles applied. Of course, ano ba yung mga ano ba yung in-apply doon sa paano ba natin paano tayo nag-arrive doon sa balance ng property, plant and equipment, no? So ano ba yung mga principles na i-apply doon, whether they're using yung bang lower of cost, no, or recoverable value. So yung kagaya kanina yung valuation yan, and ano pa yung mga, let's say doon sa anong depreciation method yung ginamit diyan, so those things, no. And then next is yung obtain permission from the client to refer to the working papers of the predecessor auditor. So if you're the auditor, ikaw yung current auditor, so humihingi ka ng permiso dun sa kliyente na kung maaaring makita yung mga previous na working paper niya. So these are just part of the procedures, no? Kasi parang continuing yun eh. And then vouch documents evidencing ownership. So if they claim na sa kanila yon, so tignan mo kung ano yung, look at the documents, no, kung sa kanila nga yun, no. Kung merong kontrata, so you go back dun sa mga contracts, no, authorization, all these things. Okay, and then number 3 is for an initial audit where the previous years unaudited, to the extent necessary to form an opinion on the accuracy of the opening balances, vouch significant transactions to a certain authorization. Again, yung authorization, no? Okay, so if this is an initial audit, kumbaga, pero wala pang audit noon, ng mga nakaraang taon, so look at the authorization as far as yung ownership is concerned. Propriety in accounting, ano ba yung mga, ano yung ginamit nila account, yung ano ba yung pag-value nila dun sa property, plant and equipment, no? Okay, or yung assertion ng management, whether kumbaga yung bang sa kanila yung the title sa kanila ba yon itong property, plant and equipment, no? Okay, so maayos ba yung pagka-account yan? Those things. Talks about yung accounting. And then ayan na naman siya. Okay. So medyo may konting yung bang animation, no? So accounting principles applied dito. So good example kung ano yung mga, let's say, kung ano yung type of valuation na ginamit doon, no? Okay, whether it's recoverable value, no, or if it's impaired, no? So kung ano yung if it's under PFRS, and of course yung depreciation, of course, whether they use straight line, some of the years. Yan. And then vouch. O, yan. I didn't remember na ganyan ang ginawa kong animation na yan, no? Okay. So iba-iba no? Para bang nahuhulog yung mga letra, no? So vouch documents evidencing ownership. So vouching, again, going back to the source document, if kiniklaim nila na sa kanila yon, yung nakalagay doon na property, plant and equipment doon sa financial statement, then they should prove it, no? Meron mga documents na, no? Okay, like yung contract, for example, no? And then examination of the current year transaction, obtain or prepare schedules of the property, plant and equipment accounts, and check footings and cross footings. Of course, yung mga mathematical computation doon. Determine if the schedules are in agreement with the ledger accounts control, general ledger control accounts. So yung general ledger control accounts, ito yung pinaka nag-a-appear dun sa financial statement, no? Okay, so titignan mo kung ano yung of course based on the working papers, if na i-reconcile mo no? So if it's in agreement, kumbaga para mo siyang tinitrace, no? Okay, and then trace individual balances to the detailed records. Ayan, so or property cards, no? Parang yung sa mga subsidiary, no? Okay, so tinitrace mo kung ano ba yung ito bang let's say itong particular equipment na to, no? Okay, saan ba yung saan ba pinanggaling, ano ba yung mga paano mo masasabing ito yung amount na yan o dun sa may-ari talaga yan dito sa company, no? So you're tracing it, no, dun sa mga detailed records, no? Okay, kasi marami yun eh, hindi lang equipment yun, could be yung mga non-current asset practically. Of course, consider in physical inspection of significant items. So one of the most persuasive evidence an auditor could have is yung bang physical, yung by physical observation, no? So nakikita niya kung talagang nandoon, no? Okay, yung existence niya. Kasi hindi naman yung iba, just to appear na parang malaki yung kanilang assets, no? Lalagyan nila yung property, plant and equipment, pero hindi naman pala nag-i-exist yun dun sa planta. So, ano lang, just to, kumbaga parang window dressing lang, ika nga, no? Okay, when you window dress, so you're talking about para bang pinapalaki mo lang yung financial statement mo, no? Of course, siyempre, para mas attractive sa investors yung gano'n, no? So, kung minsan, the auditor would just go there at random, okay? So, and then examination of current year transactions for acquisitions or debits to property, plant, and equipment. So, determine authorization by examining invoices, capital expenditure, authorization, leases, and other evidence. Kung may mga in-house construction, yung work orders, no? Okay, pag manufacture or paggawa mismo nung planta, supporting additions, no? Okay, kasi yung let's say kung may mga especially kung may mga addition yan, kasi let's say for example from the other year, no, compared to this to this year, parang lumaki yung property, plant and equipment. Could be merong addition yan, so you have to examine, no, as an auditor, saan ba galing yun, yung mga invoice na, whether binili ba yan or kinonstruct ba yan, so those things, no, whether this is yung bang contract of lease, finance lease, no, na binabayaran ng company, and later on may option to own sila yung equipment, no. So those things you want to determine that, of course, also to disclose that, no, para hindi rin ma-mislead yung mga users. And test calculation of capitalized interest to determine the appropriateness of rates, amounts, and capitalization periods. Ayan. Kasi since long-term asset to, so merong mga pwedeng, of course, finifinance yan, so merong mga interest rates yun. Ascertain the business reasons for unusual addition. Ayan, so yung mga unusual addition dun sa property, plant, and equipment account, no? Okay, so whether they are really, kumbaga, nag-i-exist ba talaga yan, o if it's authorized, no? Those things. Examination of current year transactions. So for disposal or credit to property, plant, and equipment accounts. Yan, so ito yung pagkabinenta naman, no? Okay, so examine authorizations and other data supporting retirement, sales, and other disposal of property, plant, and equipment. Kasi merong maaaring kung let's say pag binenta yan, no, meron ring, of course, may effect yan dun sa cash flow, yung perang pumasok kasi naibenta yan. So that could also be a clue, no? Bakit na-credit yung bakit nawala bakit may credit balance, credit yung particular na equipment na yun. Of course, pag kinikredit mo yung particular asset, ibig sabihin it's either binenta mo, no, in the case of or retire, of course, and other disposals of property, plant, and equipment. So you need to determine yung propriety nung account. First, test the computations of the resulting gains and losses. No? So kung merong gains and losses yan, kasi okay, kung naibenta yan, yung kanila, halimbawa, yung bodega, no? So kung meron niyang, let's say, for 200 million yung cost niya, no? Pero naibenta, let's say, ng 180 million. No? So merong loss yun. So may kita natin, no? Based dun sa accounting records. Determine the assets disposed of and the related accumulated depreciation have been properly derecognized. So because when you sell a property, of course yung kaakibat niya na depreciation, which is accumulated depreciation, the contra asset account of that particular property, no? Okay, let's say a building. So i-derecognize yan kung hindi na kasama yan doon sa account dapat, no? Okay, doon sa financial state, sa financial position. Ascertain the business reasons for unusual disposal o yung business reason, no? Kasi ang tinitignan natin dito mostly yung accounting reason, yung debits, credits, yung addition, bakit nadagdagan o bakit nabawasan, binili ba nila yan, sa kanila ba yan, or by lease ba yan, or kung in the case of yung bang, if it's a sale or if it's a credit, so ito ba'y naibenta, magkano yung kinita nila, or kumita ba sila rito, those things, no? Well, there are also business reason behind that. Bakit sila nagbenta? Bakit siguro magsasara na sila, or let's say lilipat sila sa mas maliit na planta, no? Those things, no? So yung business reason, no? Because that could also be a telltale sign, no? Na yung company is maybe kumbaga incurring some debts, no? Na kailangan nilang bayaran, na they were forced to use, no, or to sell their non-current asset, no, or those things. So sometimes they use their long-term asset or yung bang capital asset nila in order to finance a short-term na which is not a good business practice, no? And then number 4, for impaired property, plant, and equipment, determine whether management has appropriately identified indications of impairment. So ito yung mga nai-impair, no, na property, plant, and equipment. So pag sinabi na-impair, nagkakaroon ng kumbaga yung bang damage, no, yung particular na asset na yon. So now management should hindi lang to depreciation, kundi yung bang halimbawa kasi minsan pagka nire-rearrange or let's say re-engineer yung planta, na nakikita rin yung if there is na-impair yung assets, or let's say para bang nire-remodel nila yung planta, so nakikita yung impairment. So whether these are appropriately identified, no? So ipapakita rin yan, kailangan mag-appear yan dun sa financial statement na this is valued, no, at its at dun sa yung less impairment, no, yung impairment loss niya at its recoverable amount, no? Okay? And then determine that the methods and assumptions used by management in estimating recoverable value are reasonable. Okay? So tignan nila kung ano how they value that, no? Okay, yung pagkuha ng recoverable amount. Kasi yung recoverable amount, ito normally mas mababa pa siya dun sa carrying amount ng property, no? Okay, so of course when you sa financial accounting, no, yung recoverable value is simply the higher between yung fair value nung asset or yung recoverable amount, no? Whichever is higher doon. Pero mas mababa sila doon sa carrying amount kasi nga kaya nagkaroon nga ng impairment, eh. So yun. So titignan ng auditor kung paano, ano yung mga assumptions, no, estimating yung recoverable value. Okay, and then ascertain if the impairment was properly recorded, no? So dapat merong impairment loss 'yon, no? Okay? And then para maka-arrive doon sa recoverable amount, no? Okay, so we also need to go back doon sa financial state, doon sa I'm going to make a video on yung dito sa impairment of asset, no? Oh, I think I have one there, no? So I have a video also on impairment of assets. You can just check it out, no? Okay, so ito yung bang pagka nagkakaroon na ng yung bang bumababa na yung value ng asset. Okay, number 5 is examine lease contracts to determine whether leases are properly classified as finance or operating, and determine whether the proper accounting has been performed and appropriate disclosures have been made. Okay, so ito naman yung with regard to sa finance and operating lease, no? And then number 6, support exam. This is also pertaining to the current year transactions, no? Examine support for significant changes to repairs, maintenance, and other expense accounts to determine if they should be capitalized to property, plant, and equipment. So especially pagka major repairs, no? Okay na, kumbaga sa humaba yung buhay ng, because of that renovation, kumbaga humaba yung buhay nung building, no? So naglagay sila ng ng annex. So hindi basta-basta ini-expense yun, no? So it should be capitalized. So dapat yung proper accounting, yung bang ito yung tinatawag, yung kanina sinasabi natin, no? Kung paano nila in-account, no? Ano yung how do yung pagdating doon sa accounting side nito, no? Okay, now if it's also kung maliliit lang naman na gastos siya, no, yung bang regular repairs, that could be considered as an operating expense, no? Next, number 7, test computations of depreciation, depletion, and amortization to determine the appropriateness of the methods and estimated lives used. So ito naman yung assertion of yung valuation. Kailangan tama yung, of course, yung valuation niya doon, no? Okay, so determine if they are consistent with the methods and lives used in prior period. So if they're using yung straight line, kailangan consistent yun, straight line, no? Unless there is a change of an estimate, no? Okay, so pinalitan nila yung useful life, no? So those things, no? Okay, so that should be also documented, no? Okay, next is yung review minutes of meetings, legal documents, and other evidence of liens, pledges, and restrictions on property, plant, and equipment. Kasi ito naman yung bang ownership, baka mamaya may iba na pala may-ari noon, merong it is mortgage, no? Okay, so there are restrictions doon. Okay, so look at those sa mga legal documents like sa contracts, no? And then search for unrecorded retirements. Ayan. So examination of cash receipts, tax declaration. Ayan, kasi kung naibenta yon, yung tax declaration, of course, kung meron silang gain, or let's say of course that is considered as an income, no, doon sa company. Of course, magbabayad sila ng tax para doon, no? Insurance records, credit to scrap sales, and inquiry to the knowledgeable company personnel. So ano ba bakit ba kailangan natin mahalagang malaman to? Because we want to see yung propriety ng accounts na tama yung nakalagay doon, no? So users won't be misled na ito talaga yung value ng property, plant, and equipment, and ito nag-exist, no? Okay, those things, no? A tour of the company plant to observe indications of company removals. So, of course, again, like we have said a while ago, yung bang physical observation, no, inspection is one of the kumbaga yung bang persuasive evidence na nakita mo kasi you have observed it, no, physically. Kung meron man nawala doon o yung merong na, of course, no? Okay, merong ma-addition o merong, so at least nakita. And then number 10 is identify properties that are idle, no? Okay, kasi well, as the title suggests, idle na to, no? Okay, mukhang wala na tong, kumbaga, wala lang silbi doon sa, so no longer in use, pero nandun pa rin siya sa property, plant and equipment para lang tumaas yung value ng assets nila, no? So nilalagay ko minsan doon. Obsolete, no? So mamaya wala na palang, meron na palang makabagong makinarya sa paggawa ng ganitong particular na produkto. However, they still place that as one of their assets, no? That, of course, that increases their assets, no? Pero the thing is that is just a paper asset lang, no? Because it's already obsolete, no? Parang yung sa inventory rin. And then, of course, number 11, reconcile payments to government for taxes and registration with recorded assets. And okay, of course, if there is, let's say, a sale of this, no? Okay, yung mga taxes, a certain fully depreciated assets still in use are, or those that are held for sale are not further depreciated. Okay, kasi meron pang mga assets na kumbaga umabot na dun sa useful life nila, no? Yung fully depreciated na, no? Okay, pero pwede pa rin gumagana pa rin, no? Okay, determine and discuss with appropriate officials the adequacy of insurance coverage, and then determine that property, plant, and equipment that are being held for disposal are carried at appropriate amounts. So yun, so this is under the assertion of yung valuation, no? Okay, so kung are they appropriate amounts, no? Okay, yung mga held, especially mga held for disposal, no? Determine propriety of financial statement presentation and adequacy of disclosure. So makikita para yung value ng mga equipment doon, kumbaga it represents its true value, tsaka yung if there are some other features na kailangan malaman, it should be disclosed. Okay, now we're gonna move dun sa application naman ito, no? Okay, so we're going to take up this one. So the following independent situations relate to the acquisition of self-construction of various plant and equipment. And so Tyler Incorporated, so we're going to solve these mga two problems, no? Okay, so Tyler Incorporated has constructed a production equipment needed for the company expansion program. So magpapalagay sila ng planta, siguro maaring para dun sa kanilang manufacturing business, no? Okay, so Tyler received a 1.5 million bid from a reputable manufacturer for the construction of the equipment. So merong of course si Tyler yung negosyante, so siya yung magpapakonstruct, no? Okay, so the cost of direct materials and direct labor incurred to construct the equipment were 960,000 and 600,000 respectively. So the direct materials is the 960,000 and the direct labor is 600,000, no? So it is estimated that the incremental overhead cost for construction amount to 140% of direct labor cost. So magko-compute tayo niya, no? So 140 times 600,000. So that would be yung overhead cost, no? As you know, in dito sa especially ganitong sa construction, no? Okay, where is also similar to manufacturing, merong materials, direct labor and overhead, no? Okay, so kuminsan itong in cost accounting, normally ini-estimate yung overhead doon sa labor, no, sa direct labor. Okay, so fixed cost excluding interest of 2.1 million were incurred during the construction period. This amount was allocated on the construction on the basis of total prime cost. So mamaya ipapakita natin computation niya, no? The sum of direct labor, and direct materials. Ayan. So the prime cost, when you talk about prime cost, you're talking about direct material and direct labor, no? Ito. Okay, so the sum of prime cost, no, incurred to construct the new equipment amounted to 35% of the total prime cost. Yun. So the prime cost, no, yung direct materials, no, and direct labor, no? Okay, that's 35% of the total prime cost incurred for the period. So the company's policy is to capitalize all possible costs on self-construction projects. So when you say capitalize, no, it becomes part of the value of the asset, no? Okay, and then this is this depreciated on the periodically, no? Okay, doon mo kinukuha yung expense niya on a periodic basis, no? For example, yearly. Okay, so to assist in financing the construction of the production equipment, Tyler borrowed 1.5 million at the beginning of the 6-month construction period. So the loan was 2 years with 10% interest. Ayan. So ang question is, what is the total cost of the self-constructed equipment? Ayan. So ang ano nito, ang gusto natin mapatunayan dito yung assertion, yung valuation, no? And kung yung, of course, yung addition dun sa property, plant and equipment, no, na mag-a-appear yan dun sa finance statement. So we need first to know kung magkano talaga yung halaga niya, no? So the solution, of course, para tayong nagko-cost accounting dito, we get the direct material, that's 960, as we have seen a while ago. And then we add yung direct labor, which is 600,000. And then what we said a while ago, yung variable overhead is 140% of the direct labor. So that's 840,000. So it's simply 600,000 times 1.4. Okay, you get 840,000. And then yung fixed overhead naman, ang sabi dito, no, kasi ito yung fixed overhead, no? Okay, it says here yung fixed cost, no, which is 2.1 were incurred during the construction period. This amount was allocated on the basis of the total prime costs. Ayan, of direct materials. So the prime cost incurred to construct is 35%. Ayun. So ito yung tinatawag na fixed overhead. Itong 2.1 million. Pero hindi lahat yan 2.1 million. Mapupunta yun sa fixed overhead. Kasi, ano yan eh, kumbaga parang, ang kukunin lang natin dito, yung 35% raw. Kasi sabi rito, no, the new equipment amounted to 35% of the total prime cost. So ito yung fixed overhead, no? Okay, so that's multiply lang 2.1 million times 35%, you have the fixed overhead, no? As you know, sa overhead, no, there are dalawa yan, no? Merong variable tsaka fixed, no? Okay, so 735,000. So now yung interest on self-specific borrowing, sinakalagay doon yung sa bandang uli, sinabi umutang siya ng 1.5 million at 10%, no? Okay, interest. So, well, this is for the loan was for 2 years with 10% interest. So, of course, kalahati lang para dun sa taon. So, that's 75,000. So, the total self-constructed equipment is 3,210,000. So, you just add all these amounts. Okay, and then we'll go now to the second one. Ito naman, si Owen Company, no? So ito lang yung kailangan natin matandaan dito sa property, plant and equipment, especially audit of property, plant and equipment, yung valuation normally, no, and yung proprietary nung accounting nila, no. Okay, yung mga debits and credits, those things, no. So para rin basic to ng financial accounting or intermediate accounting. So the following transaction relate to Owen Company. So letter A, the national government grants the company a large tract of land to be used as a plant site. Yeah, wow. being inaward sa kanila ng gobyerno, no? The fair value is determined to be 1,620,000. Okay. So paggagawa nila ng ano nila yung sa kanilang operations, no? Okay, so Owen Company issued 280,000 ordinary shares with par value of 50 pesos. So ito yung parang pinaka ano nila, no, yung exchange of values nila doon sa tract of land, no? Yung ordinary shares, no? In exchange for the land and building, the fair value of the property is determined to be 16,200,000. Yun. There. Okay? So yung land is, ito yung following allocation row. So yung land is 3,600,000, building is 12,600,000. So the total is 16.2 million. Yun. Okay. So ang pinagpalit nila dyan, yung kanilang shares, ordinary shares, which is, of course, par value niya is 50 pesos. So, pero yung ano rito, no, yung nakalagay dito sa following paragraph, Owen Company's ordinary share are not listed on the stock exchange, but its records show that a block of 2,000 shares was sold by a shareholder a year ago at 70 peso par value. So itong 70 par value, parang ito yung tumatayong fair value or yung market value ng share. So ito yung gagamitin, hindi yung par value, no? Para kumbaga in exchange dun sa land and building. So in another 4,000 block was sold for, okay, by another shareholder 8 months ago at 63 pesos. Yun. Okay. So those are the fair value, no? Okay. So ngayon, magkano yung ano, ang tanong diyan, magkano siya EVA value, no? Yung bang 70 or 63? Tingnan natin. Owen Company constructed machinery during the year. No entry was made to remove from the accounts for materials, labor, and overhead the following costs that are properly chargeable to the machinery account. Oops, wala raw entry, no, doon sa pagtanggal doon sa machinery. So of course, meron ring gagawa natin ng entry yan, no? Okay, so isa-isayin natin mamaya yan. So yung raw materials used was 250. This pertains ito sa letter C, no? Okay. Tapos yung factory supplies used 18,000 and yung direct labor incurred 320,000. And incremental overhead cost by the construction of machinery excluding factory supplies used, that's 54,000. Okay, and then regular overhead rate applied to regular manufacturing operations, that's 60% of the direct labor cost. And so the cost of the similar machinery would be 880,000 if it had been purchased from a dealer. So the entries required to record this transaction should include debits to. Okay. So gagawa natin ng entry. So yung letter A muna, dito tayo, no? Focus muna tayo dito sa letter A, no? Okay. So sabi diyan, no? Okay. So debit land for 1,620,000. So sabi dito, the national government grants the company a tract of land to be used as a plant site, no? Okay, so of course parang binigay na sa kanila. So that is part, ano na yun, kumbaga parang asset na nila yun, no? Okay, so yun yung tract of land na yun, no? So by the way, these are separate transaction, no? Separate. Okay, so parang of course the company has gained yung ano na yun, yung land na yun. So value that as 1.6 million, no, yung fair value niya. So that should be a debit to land for 1,620,000, no? Okay, ayun. There. And then of course, yung deferred income, government grant, no? Okay, so that is 1,620,000. So it was credited dun sa government grant because it was given by the government. Okay, and of course may purpose yun. Hindi naman binigay lang sa kanila yung basta ganun. Kaya inilagay lang nila muna sa deferred income. Ika nga pagka sila muna yung, kumbaga pag nagawa na nila yung purpose, then that's a time na i-recognize nila, i-reverse na nila, i-recognize nila yung deferred income, no? And then then let's now proceed to letter B. Let's go back again to the problem. It says here that Owen Company issued 280,000 shares, 280,000 shares ordinary with par value of 50 in exchange for the land and building, which is valued at 16,200,000. Which composed of the land, which is valued at 3.6 million, and the building at 12.6 million, for a total of 16.2 million. So the entry for that particular transaction is a debit to land. Okay, so kung magkano yung fair value niya, no? Okay, which is 3.6 million, and then the building is 12.6 million. Okay, now the ordinary shares would be valued at its par value, no? So 50 plus or multiplied by 280,000 shares. Ito yung in-issue. So this is for 14 million. Now the difference between the ordinary share capital and the fair value of the assets exchanged would be credited to share premium at 2.2 million. Yeah. Okay, so the next one, letter C. So let's go back again here. So Owen Company constructed machinery during the year. No entry was made to remove from the accounts for labor, material labor, and overhead the following costs that properly chargeable to the machinery account. So here are the raw materials used, 250,000. Again, factory supplies, 18,000. Direct labor costs incurred, 320,000. And incremental overhead, that's 54,000, plus 60% of the direct labor cost. And so the cost of the machinery would be 880 if it had been purchased from the dealer. So entry would be machinery, that's 834,000. Ayan, so this is the total of this one. Okay, plus 60% of direct labor costs. Okay, so that's 0.6 multiplied by direct labor costs. So 192. So you just add this. This would be 834. Okay. So that is the cost of the materials, so nakadebit machinery for 834,000. And then raw materials, of course, that's 250. So yun na. Tapos yung direct labor, that's 320. Yun siya. Yun. Tapos yung factory supplies, factory overhead, that's 264. Now the computation here is yan, may asterisk dito, nakalagay dito. No? So applied overhead, that's of course we have computed that. No? That's 60% of the direct labor, which is 192, plus yung variable overhead. Okay, that's 54,000, and yung factory overhead supplies. So as you can see here, yung 54,000, this is variable overhead. Yan. Tapos yung 18,000 in addition dun sa dito sa 60% of 320. Okay, yung applied overhead, no? Yan, so 192. So for a total of 264,000. So that is the entry for letter C. So if you have any questions with regard to this particular topic, no, so you just write your comments, and of course you may suggest any topic that you want, that we want to discuss here. Okay, so God bless and stay safe. Of course, subscribe and like and share.